The brutal reality of frontline policing was highlighted when an officer in Lancashire was left with a serious head injury following an attack. And a warning, we are going to show some of the police body cam footage of that now, and this is just some of the footage that we are able to show you of what happened. PC Ashley Aspinall said he was genuinely convinced he was going to die after being assaulted last year by Ian Scott, who was drunk and abusive.
Scott was given a suspended sentence and ordered to pay £1,500 in compensation. However, PC Aspinall says it's disappointing that his attacker wasn't sent to prison. And he joins us now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ashley, thank you so much for joining us this morning. A terrible incident that you go through. Your job is out there to try and protect us, and that's what you try to do. And I suppose it is a risk that you're going to be in these incidents, but that was horrific.
Yeah.
Do you mind taking us back to that night? And
still quite difficult to obviously see that.
Absolutely. I was going to say, how is it when you watch that footage back?
It's really difficult to watch. You know, I've watched it a couple of times over the last few days and weeks, especially over the last 18 months. But I'd like to say it was a normal day in policing. I had a student at the time last year in April. It was midnight. We attended a pub for a completely separate matter. And there was just a chap outside who was just very disorderly, quite violent, quite verbally abusive. Just trying to get back in the pub and get his phone. Due to his behaviour, it was appropriate just to move him on and just try and move him from the area. He was given multiple warnings regarding his behaviour subsequent to his arrest. I think we come to the decision, a couple of minutes in, trying to speak to him, from him trying to go around the other side and get into the pub, that his arrest was necessary. As I've gone to effect this male's arrest, he's sort of pulled away from me and sort of resisted my advance and grip. As I've sort of taken a step back, sort of tried to risk assess it further, as I've gone in to get him and arrest him, he's rugby tackled me pretty much to the floor and split my head open. And it was quite surreal, because I just remember it was quite a nice night. It wasn't raining or anything. I just remember just lying there thinking, I don't remember it raining. What is all this sort of puddle I'm in? It was only till I realised that I touched my back of my head, and literally from the tip of my finger to my palm was just covered in blood.
So this sort of came out of the blue then. What was going through your mind at that moment? Because you thought, this is it, didn't you?
I did. No one, goes to work in any form of work or any emergency services and think, this is going to be my last shift, this is going to be my last day of working. I just remember just lying there and just managed to press my emergency button. And colleagues rushing to my aid and assistance and giving me life-changing first aid, really. But I led there thinking, I think I'm going to die. I think this is it.
God. So. And how long was your recovery until you were back and fit again?
I joke with colleagues, when I'm receiving treatment in the hospital, I'll be back next week. I'll be fine. I'll be back out. I think the realisation sort of hit when I realised how severe the injury was. That it was about 4 months, I think. I was 11 days in the hospital, which was fantastic staff from the NHS. As I got out again, I was like, let's get back to work. But yeah, I was sort of 4 months off work. And when I got back and ready to go out, another 2 months, unfortunately, restricted duties.
So it's had an impact on a lot of aspects of your life, though, it's fair to say, not just your work, but including your family life as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to touch on, really, is, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, in any line of work, emergency services, we're like me and you, we're family members, we're uncles, we're aunties, we're daughters, we're sons. And yes, I put on this uniform and I go and I serve the public, and, we're a victim-focused organisation, but that impact that's had on my wife, who was, suffering with postnatal depression at the time, my daughter, who was so young, barely 1, who was struggling, is now still struggling with talking and walking. I've got all that sort of stress going on at home. To then come to work and, go through, that experience, it was traumatic for me and them.
So going to the court case then, the judge gave Scott a suspended sentence in order to pay £1,500 in compensation. You think that's lenient? Why do you think the judge did that?
Ultimately, we have to trust our judicial system, and that was the right decision. For me, I've got to be honest and open. I'd be lying if I didn't say I am really upset and disappointed by that sentencing. I think ultimately, if you go out and excessively drink or go out and think it's OK to assault an emergency service worker in any line of work, whether it be fire, ambulance or police officers, there should be that deterrent to think, if you're going to do that, you need to, face the consequences and receive a custodial sentence, because where do we stop? For someone like myself who was, bleeding on the floor and nearly died, for someone then to receive a suspending sentence is very upsetting, really.
We know that sort of figures that were out, I think, last year in August, that out of 11,000 offenders were proceeded against for assault of an emergency worker, the overall conviction rate was 84%, and that's just a conviction. Do we know how many of them end up getting custodial sentences?
No, I'd love to know that myself. I think that's quite an interesting fact. But, you know, some people could receive an out-of-court disposal, they could get a caution, they could receive similar, you know, suspended sentence. There's different sort of out-of-court disposals that can be dealt with a certain, you know, defendant or individual. I wouldn't be able to know or tell you how many of them then actually received a custodial sentence. But whatever that figure is, it's not enough, in my opinion.
And how much has it changed the way you look at your role and what you do you think?
I think when I go to work, I absolutely love my job. You know, as an operational police officer, you know, I joined this organisation in Lancashire when I was 29. I've been doing it now for 5.5, 6 years, and I absolutely love it. And I don't want something like this to change me. But, you know, officers out there are going through this on a daily basis. It has happened, it's happening now, and it unfortunately will happen in the future. I like to think when I go to work, you know, it is still affecting me, you know, psychologically. You know, I do go to certain incidents and I think, is this going to happen again? Is this going to happen to my colleague? What if I was to go to something quite similar with someone else? How am I going to react in that moment? So, I don't like to think it's changed me in the way sort of like wanting to do the job, but I definitely think it's changed me how maybe I would deal with a certain incident. You
know, Ashley, it's so important that you've come onto the show this morning because we can all see that how much this job matters to you.
Yeah,
the fact that you're back out there again today and also the dangers that you face. And I think it's really important because the police do sometimes get a bad reputation.
Yeah.
You know, on this show, we've talked about racism in the police, misogyny in the police. We had somebody on earlier on who was a victim of rape, and she said she wasn't treated very well by the police. And we've seen what's happened in the last weeks, and certain very mainstream politicians are accusing your organisation of having two-tier police forcing. All of this stuff that you have to deal with, is it in your mind when you're on the street? Does it affect your job in any way? And is it something that we need to be more aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of it, my colleagues are aware of it, you know, but we've got a job to do and we serve our communities, we serve our public. And, you know, when I joined this organisation, I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to serve our victims of crime and I wanted to change or make a positive impact. You know, it is really, really difficult when you hear all this on, you know, social media and, you know, dealing with certain incidents. But we just have to take that, you know, step up. We have to obviously, you know, push that aside. And, you know, we police by public consent, you know, and we're a victim-focused organisation again. And if I was to go to work ultimately and have that affect me, I wouldn't be able to be an effective operational police officer.
I just think, you know, if any of us, like, so I've been mugged once before, and sometimes you're in the street and you're always conscious of it. It's happened once. You're always thinking about it.
Yeah.
You must go to your job when you're dealing with drunks or dealing with people outside of a pub. It must always be in your mind,
when you put yourself out there again, day after day after day, I guess in the back of your mind thinking that it could happen again.
Yeah. Well, firstly, obviously, sorry to hear about your experience.
Well, you know, it's just...
yeah, I mean, they say, you know, the average person, you know, goes through 6, 7, 8 traumatic incidents in a lifetime. Police officers can go up to 800 traumatic incidents, and that's why it's really important to talk, you know, receive therapy, counselling, speak to each other, speak to family, colleagues. But yeah, it is very, very difficult and it is challenging at the moment, but we have to put it aside and we have to move forward.
And the number of incidents as well is increasing, 13% compared to the year before of offences of assaults on police officers. I mean, do you think it's maybe the sentences not being enough that's meaning that people are thinking, oh, I can get away with this?
I think there needs to be a stronger deterrent, ultimately. I mean, if you are going to assault a police officer or an emergency service worker, there needs to be that system in place, and I understand there is it there, but it needs to be stronger and harder. That if you're going to do that, then you need to, you know, face that consequence and you need to receive appropriate sentencing and a custodial sentence. Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks so much for coming in
to
talk
to
about
this. I really
this.
appreciate
I mean, you know, it's a great job that you're doing, you're continuing to do despite everything that's happened. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
We do have a response from the Ministry of Justice. A spokesman said this was an awful crime and our sympathies remain with PC Ashley Aspinall. Our hard-working emergency workers play a vital role in keeping the public safe, and while sentencing is a matter for independent judges, those intent on assaulting emergency workers can be sentenced to up to 2 years in prison.
And also, just to say, if you have been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing this morning, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.